He didn't, a long time ago he had stopped drinking, so I have been giving him flavored water. I'd put some water in the bowl and I'd add a tiny bit of bone broth or a tiny bit of a pumpkin puree, a little bit of soy milk, things like that. So 10 days ago, the only thing he would take from me was a little bit of water that rice had been cooked in and a tiny bit of soy milk in it, and that's all he would take all day. The next day, this was 9 days ago, was a Friday, and he wouldn't take anything. And he looked very unhappy. Actually, for a long time, he hasn't looked happy, but you know, he was alive, he was sleeping well, he was dreaming while he was sleeping. You know, he was walking around, there's a pet door, so he would go in the yard. Everything okay. So this Friday morning, 9 days ago, all of a sudden I see him in the corner, in the front room, with his face stuck in the corner. And I tried to get him to stand up, and he could not stand up. I put a small carpet under him and lifted him up and figured, well, maybe if he's outside in the fresh air, you know, I could do something for him. So I carried him into the carport. We didn't make it all the way into the carport because he started having he lost control of his bowels. So I put him right there outside of the kitchen door in this little alcove in the carport. And I tried to move him around a little bit to get him comfortable. I left a carpet under him. I put a towel over him to keep him warm. And I sat there with him. And he got worse and worse. He had a seizure. He started like spitting up some kind of frothy material. So I started calling mobile veterinarians. Most of them were mobile. I called 10 veterinarians. Some of them would say, we're not open on Friday. We don't come to the house in this kind of circumstance where I might be wanting them to place the injection for euthanasia so he would not suffer. All kinds of reasons they couldn't come. So my last phone call number 10, was a veterinarian that he had been to for years. And believe it or not, it's 1 1/10 mile from my house. And I called him up and I talked to the staff and they said, yes, he does come to certain clients in your community. And then they talked to him and got back on the phone and they said, he's the only veterinarian here today in the office, so he cannot make a house visit. But you can bring him here. And I said, how can I bring him there when he's having seizures, he's lost control of his bowels, and he's vomiting? Won't that make your office unclean? They said, we're sorry, you can bring him here somehow. The veterinarian cannot come. And I said, well, I think maybe he needs the euthanasia shot. And they responded the same way. He can't come. Now, I think there's plenty of things this veterinarian could do. He could leave there for a half hour. I'm so close to his office. He could have told me to come to the office and pick up the injection and, you know, tell me how to give it. I'm a nurse. He could have said, well, I'm going to cancel some of today's patients and I'll be there as soon as I can. In the worst case, I'll be there after I finish seeing all my clients. Nothing. You know, some people pick a career because they're good at it, not because they care. Well, I won't go into that train of thought. Anyway, so I I took a little plastic stool and I sat there with him. And I sat there with him. I sat there with him for 12 hours. I got up to get water. I got up to use the bathroom. That's all. And I petted him. And I sang to him. And I prayed for him. Anyway, I want to tell you, don't be afraid to let them die naturally. Because it felt so good to help him, to be with him. He knew I was there. And keep in mind, even if the dog starts having convulsions, seizures, they have no pain during a convulsion, just like people, because they're totally unconscious, no pain. Now, when the seizure ends, then, of course, their muscles, their joints will be aching. I tried to turn him over so he could be in a different position, but he just, made sounds like it was too painful to be moved. So I had to keep him in that same position. And I'm just glad I spent all that time with him. I also saw online that the euthanasia injection does not necessarily remove all pain, just some pain or most pain. So sometimes, in order to have closure, it's very important to spend time with whoever your loved one is, whether it's a person or a pet. So after all this happened, keep in mind, this was Friday afternoon. Now, my dog has been watching me prepare for the Sabbath every Friday afternoon for 10 years. He sees when I take out the shofar, the ram's horn, the ibex horn, and he kind of goes in the next room and he concentrates. He knows I'm going to sound the horn. And he doesn't come near me. He sees that I'm praying and singing prayers, and he just watches me. So he knows what happens on Friday afternoon. Like he knows it's Friday. And so I'm thinking that he knows he's dying. He knows it's Friday. He knows that I have to bury him. And he knows that, don't think I'm silly, like he knows it's a day of rest when Sunset Friday comes. So what happens? Before dark, I had gone in the house and to go to the bathroom or have water or something. I come back and he was totally still. So when I couldn't feel any heartbeat and there was no breathing, so I knew that was it. And several months ago, I had dug a deep, good grave in the front yard, and I had kept it covered with wood and branches, heavy, big wide branches and a little wagon. It was all covered up so nobody could fall in it. So I was ready. And I didn't want the dirt right next to his face or his body. I don't know, silly maybe, but I just wanted him to be treated with respect. So I took two leg warmers, and I covered his face and head. And I took 2 pairs of socks, and I covered his front paws and his back legs. And the carpeting he was on, I put it around him, and the towel that was covering him, and I tied everything up with some, fabric, so, and I folded his legs under. You have to do this fast because the body might get stiff. And then I put him in this nylon bag. It's, one of those laundry bags. And then I tried to carry him or drag him to the front grave. And I couldn't. I had packed him up, wrapped him up so good that it was too heavy for me. So I called the neighbor across the street. I was so upset I couldn't even remember her first name. I just said, and I told her my first name, and I was silent. I couldn't speak. And she said, "Is everything all right?" And I said, "No." And I said that, the dog died. So she said she was sorry, and she said and I said, "The grave's ready. He's all wrapped up, but he's too heavy for me." So she said, "I'll send my husband over." This is the New Yorker that's always complaining and is a comedian. So he came over. He looked like he felt worse about it than me. And he carried him to the front grave, like, I don't know, what was it? Maybe 20, 30 feet from the carport. And he put him in there, and then I put a bunch of things to try to keep away any wild animals, like, baking soda and eucalyptus oil and salt, rock salt, and I had it pretty deep anyway. It was almost 3 feet deep. And then I put all the sandy soil back on top of it, and I put some branches on top of it, and that was it. And I was thinking, he was so used to resting on the Sabbath with me for 10 years that he wanted to enter his last rest on the Sabbath and let me rest. Sorry to get upset. Since then, I've been studying what religious scholars think about animals going to heaven. And I found one. It was a rabbi named Isaac Luria in the 16th century. So this is some of the quotes. He said that animals do have independent souls, and they do go to heaven. And every created entity possesses a soul, the spark of the Almighty, the Most High created through speech. He created everything by just speaking them into existence. But regarding people, he created their life in them by breathing into them. Now, when we talk, there's breath that comes out of our mouth, but when you blow or breathe out, that's even more power. So the Almighty breathed into Adam's nostrils the soul of life. And so man's soul comes from the essence of the Almighty. And the Almighty gave mankind the power to elevate this essence from him in creation. So an animal's soul is elevated through positive and spiritual interactions with man. Animals were created before man. And in the code of biblical law, it directs us to learn from animals, because animals teach us hard work, cleanliness, and discretion. And dogs are teachers of love, loyalty, forgiveness, and they bring heaven into our lives. Okay. During the time when my dog was suffering, he howled one time. To me, that was like a prayer, just one time. It was also, to me, like the shofar, like he was blowing the shofar saying, "Here I come." Some of the things I said to him during those 12 hours were, he's going to see his family, he's going to see my family, and all my departed family and friends. I wish I could be with them. I wish they were still here. But this dog, he only wanted to be with me. That's all he wanted. In the Bible, in the book of Daniel, the 4th chapter, there's the story about King Nebuchadnezzar, that he was so prideful and ungrateful that the Almighty turned him into an animal. I believe he was like that for 7 years. And there's another animal story about Nathan, the prophet Nathan, telling King David a story about a man who was bringing up his little lamb as if he was his own child. I was thinking, my dog was sick for, I don't know, like more than a year, and I was thinking that I'm going to be terrified, when he's gone, well, besides missing him, like of a burglar or intruder. But I'm not afraid. I don't know if it's because every single house around me has dogs in it, and someone would be really clueless to break in here. I mean, because one of them or more of them would sense it. Now, the rabbi I talked about who said animals go to heaven, he wrote a lot about Kabbalah, which is a spiritual study in the Bible. It's not in the Bible, but it's like based on the Bible. And knowledge of this, the Kabbalah, used to be kept secret in the 16th century because people knew that the most powerful thing in the universe are the things we can't see, metaphysical things. And they would want to learn about it for personal power, kind of like alchemy. And now you could learn about Kabbalah anywhere. Why? Because people are so materialistic now and pleasure seekers. Nobody's seeking it for power anymore, so they just let everybody have this knowledge, and you could find it online very easily. In fact, I sent away for a book, I'm expecting it today, written by Isaac Luria, this rabbi from the 16th century. And that's the end of my notes. What else can I say? Think about it. I think my whole experience with this wouldn't have been beautiful like it was. It would have been so ugly if that veterinarian a mile from here would have come here. I mean, someone with such a cold heart. I mean, people like that, you could see it on their face. I mean, I knew a long time ago that, he doesn't really like people. He's not so crazy about animals. So sometimes, or if you're connected with spiritual things, everything just works out the way it's supposed to, and we shouldn't be afraid. So think about what I said. Now, I always have trouble shutting this thing on.